Hello. Today we're going to talk about caring for the caregiver. That would be you. First of all, why is it so critically important that you care for yourself? We're going to talk about the concept first of when you board the plane with a loved one and you were told by the flight attendant that in case of any emergency and we lose cabin pressure, that you need to first secure the mask to yourself before you put it on your loved one, whomever that may be, who needs a little extra help. Now, your tendency, your instinct may be, no, I got to take care of them first. And so that's why they stress, no, override that plan. Take a few seconds to put it on yourself because you may need a couple of minutes to secure it to them. They're getting oxygen the whole time, but to finish the whole process, it may take some time. And by that time, you may have passed out. You may not have any oxygen for yourself. That same concept is true of why we need to care for ourselves so that we're around to care for other people, those that we love. Think about what would happen if you all of a sudden had to be hospitalized for something. You got the flu, you got a virus, one of the ones that's going around now, or you didn't even realize you had diabetes or something, that it was an onset during the time you've been caring for your loved one because you didn't make your doctor's appointments. Now you're hospitalized and there's no one there to take care of your loved one. So we're going to talk about in this course how you can care for yourself in just a little bit of time a day, the few things that you do, very practical, so that you are around a long time to spend the time and attention you need on your loved one while you are able to take care of your own health as well. So I'll start with a few things that's recommended by the Cleveland Clinic, and then we will proceed with a lot of other things. And some of these things I'll stress in more detail later. But according to the Cleveland Clinic, they say first you should find a friend to talk to. Share your feelings and all those frustrations. It's okay to say them out loud because this is a trusted friend. And it may be, a close friend, a sister, someone from your church, a nurse at the doctor's office, someone in a support group, but you need to voice those things out loud. Secondly, they say you should set realistic goals. What can you do and what can you not do? What can you do as one person in so many hours of a day? And where do you need help? What are your short-term and long-term goals in terms of this is how much help I need now, but in the next few months or in a few years, I may need more help. And then they say to educate yourself about the disease process of your loved one. Let's not overthink it and let's not underthink it. Let's not be in denial. Let's realize how bad it is, or maybe it's not as bad as we thought. Let's not make up something based on what we heard about somebody else, but let's be in the know of everything we can about their disease process. And then they say a couple of other things. One is to do everything you can to take care of your own health. We'll be talking a lot about those: nutrition, hydration, relaxation techniques, exercise, all those things that you've probably been told and you've heard. I'm going to give you some easy ways to think about how you can incorporate that into your life. And the other thing they say is to incorporate healthy coping strategies. And I'm going to give you a couple of those as well. And a lot of that is how to think so that you can adapt and be the best that you can be while you're caring for your loved one. So with that, I'm going to give you a couple of bits of information, and that is something else that's stressed by the Cleveland Clinic, is that you seek all the outside resources that you can. So step one, they say be familiar with everything in your own area, be familiar with everything online that's available to you that you can relate to, that's specific to your specific needs. The person you care for may not be like anybody in one counseling group, but they may be, have very unique needs of what they need and how you can be there for them. There's other sources such as home health, if your physician prescribes that or your physician practitioner prescribes that, so you could talk to them about that. And if you get that, I really stress that you should be able to take the few minutes that they are there, unless they need to show you something, to train you on how to do something. Take at least 20 minutes. Let's say they're there for 30 minutes. Take 20 of those minutes to go take a walk, to go spend some time to yourself, go have a quiet moment to do some of the things I'm going to tell you about, like journaling, go listen to some music, go take a shower, just go have some of your own time. That is critical if you have that outside help. There's other private caregivers that you can bring into your home, private aides, private caregivers, where you may only need them a couple of hours on the weekend or a couple of hours a day. Sometimes it does sound very expensive to bring them in for 8 hours a day. That may not be something you can afford, but there are options to bring them in for shorter periods of time. And then there's some other long-term resources you might need to think about, especially if you have an older loved one you care for. And even though you said, I would never want mom or dad or my spouse to go into a nursing home or assisted living, recognize that if they need 2 or 3 people to lift them, just to transfer them to a chair, or if they become combative, they are hallucinating, they don't recognize you anymore, they think you're a stranger and they're trying to hurt you, or if the one moment you went to sleep, they almost burned down the house, or they escape and they're running down the highway. Be realistic with at what point do I need other help, and where they may need to live somewhere else, and where do I need to seek those resources at that point. So that's all a part of the education process. And then another resource is one of our own sponsors to this particular conference, and I say this because it's free resources that I'm very familiar with. They have lots of things for education that we can use to learn. They have other resources, they have support groups, they have lots of great short videos that is very informative, and that is Care Partners of Texas. Their website is carepartnerstexas.org. I won't go into a lot of that, you can look it up, but there's just a wealth of information, and it's all free. It's sponsored by grants and by people who give to that cause, and it's there for you. There's other websites as well, so that is one of the things the Cleveland Clinic recommends, is that you seek all of your available resources. Okay, so now let me give you one of the coping strategies. This is called resilience. And I used to think resilience was almost a negative term, like it's something we need to get over. And you don't just get over any major difficulty in your life that you're living with, or it's not a difficulty. We love our loved ones, but it can be very stressful. It can be a very long to-do list, and it can be exhausting sometimes. Resilience is about adapting, about thinking a little bit differently, about using a different mindset of how to think about it. And I'll give you a quote from, I do a lot of research to support this. One recent study by Palacio in 2019, and I'll read this. It said, it summarized that they found that a resilient coping style in caregivers releases stress and reduces stress and burdens that you may feel, and promotes health of caregivers. So it's worth looking into, how do we have this resilient lifestyle? I'm going to share with you some research by Lucy Hone, and she has a background of researching this in depth from an educational standpoint at different universities, as well as in her own life. So once she spent many years studying and researching resilience for people who've had major trials and difficulties in their life. And that could be from a huge financial loss, a divorce, a job loss, a death of a close loved one, name a long list. How did they learn to survive and adapt and continue to be there for the rest of their family, for themselves, and for their own life? She then, after studying all that, tragically lost her own child, along with her best friend and her best friend's child. It was sudden. They were hit by a drunk driver. How do you survive after that? I can't imagine anything that bad happening. And that's what she's thinking. And she looked back over her research and she said, none of this is helping me, or a lot of it is not. She also looked at her research that said, once you've lost that, once you've gone through that, your chance of divorce is very high. Your chance of major depression, major anxiety, very high. Your chance of losing a job, losing finances, filing for bankruptcy. It just went on and on, all these negative things. And so quickly, I want to tell you, she found 3 things to help her. 3 concepts. If you incorporate these into your life, I incorporate them into my life, and it's something that can help us all, no matter what our situation is or will be in the future. And that is, number 1, to realize that adversity does not discriminate. Bad things happen to all of us, not just to a certain social class or to certain people in certain areas or people in certain financial classes or people of certain ages. It happens to all of us. And then it helps somehow, that is helpful to think we are not alone. It's helpful to know that when you see Facebook and different social media and you see only the happy things in their life, when they close the door and in their own private life, they've got a lot of their own trials. They're just choosing not to share them. And I know some people only share all the bad things in their life. But we all have adversity. And so when we realize that, it's a little bit easier to think everybody doesn't have that perfect, happy life with no trials at all. That was the first thing that helped her. The second thing, and they become more powerful with each thing. The second thing was, she said, we must choose carefully what we're going to think about, what thoughts we're going to let in our heads. And it's interesting how she said it's human nature for us to dwell on worst case scenarios. What problems could happen? What are the bad things that could happen? Because we feel it's our place in life to be the problem solver, the fix-it person, the one who thinks about all those bad things that could happen, and we don't let them happen. So we need to dwell on those. She said that as humans, we tend to cling to negative things like Velcro. We just can't, those negative thoughts, we can't pull them away from us. I mean, we can if we consciously think about it, but that's our human nature. Whereas she said positive thoughts seem to just bounce off of us like Velcro, just slides right off. And it's, not Velcro, like Teflon, just slides right off. We can't seem to just cling to that and hold to that because we feel a little guilty that we're focusing on all the positive, but we should be thinking about the problems so we can fix them. So we need to focus on the good. And we'll get to that later when I show you some strategies of how to focus on the good. In her life, she shared several examples to look around at her other children, to focus on what she's thankful for. What is she grateful for every day? So the third thing, and this one really hit home, and that is that we need to stop and consider, especially when we feel ourselves in this spiral of going off on a tangent or rabbit hole or whatever you want to call it, into these negative thoughts or negative actions. We should stop and ask ourselves, is this thought or action helping me or is it hurting me? And so for her, she said, I would spend hours into the night not sleeping, and I would focus on thinking about when my daughter was here and looking at her pictures for hours and hours. And she had to realize, this is making things worse. I have to look at what I do have and not dwell on what I don't have. This is past her grief period. She's gotten through the denial, the anger, the grief stages. And this is, months later when she's needing to move on, but she's still dwelling on what she doesn't have. And she also said, what about our actions? What about when you choose to take medicine to put you to sleep and pretend this is not happening? If you just bury your grief rather than talking about it. If you choose to drink a glass of wine or a second glass of wine or something that ultimately is not healthy, to eat certain things just to make yourself pretend this is not happening and to repress those thoughts. You can imagine how bad that can be. If you keep repressing things, one day you're going to explode, or it's going to evidence itself in negative health outcomes. Just as we just heard about mental health, if more depression and anxiety, even anger and bitterness, if you keep repressing it. So replace those thoughts and those actions with something that's healthy. Let's replace what's not helping with something that does help. Go for a walk. Get someone to stay with your loved one for just a few minutes. Even a 15-minute walk is a healthy thing to do. Get some help on the weekend for an hour or two to go take a yoga class or go have lunch with a friend. Allow yourself to laugh and to do some of the things that we'll be talking about in this course. Replace the things that you answered that question with, no, it's not helping me. And so you're going to do something that is helping you. Okay, so now let me tell you just really quick a few clinical things just to kind of put behind you to be aware of, and then we're going to jump into all of those care strategies. If you're dealing with depression, for example, and you've heard a lot about that, just know that you want to work with a counselor or a physician to address those things. And know that there are many medications as options. And sometimes your physician does need to work with you to understand your body chemistry, because what helps one person is not going to help another at all. So I just want to say that 70% of the people in multiple studies that I've read, it's about 70% of the people who take medication for depression have found it to be very effective. But many times the first medication does not help at all, and they have to, after a few weeks, you've got to report that back. The first week or so, you may even have nausea, side effects you don't know, but once it's in your system and it's not helping, after a couple of weeks, you want to tell your physician the second medication may help very much, may be perfect for what you needed. Counseling strategies are very helpful as well. And then with anxiety, counseling strategies can often be very, very effective. They give you strategies that works for you that may not work for anybody else. Do be careful with benzodiazepines. That's a drug class that includes things that used to be Valium and Librium. Those are older. Now you may see more Xanax or alprazolam or Ativan or Klonopin. Those are benzodiazepines. They have long-term negative effects such as short-term memory, decreasing brain function, and even dementia. And then understand that some things could cause anxiety that you're doing, like some food additives like red dye number 40, MSG, even aspartame and those artificial sweeteners. Those can increase or trigger anxiety. And then work with your physician on a few other things, such as checking for anemia, that you may think you have depression, but you could have a low red blood count. So they would need to do a CBC, a complete blood count. Check your thyroid levels. So they may need to do, a thyroid test, and also check for your blood glucose in case you're hypoglycemic. Some of those things, once you get that regulated where it needs to be, that helps a great deal, as well as even checking for your omega-3s. A lot of people are low in their omega-3s. They don't even know that. And you don't want to take more if you don't have low levels. So you need to get that test first. And then when they brought those levels up, either through food, nutrition, resources, or a supplement, then that resolved a great deal of their anxiety. So that's a little thing behind you. Now let's jump into sleep disorders. So guess what? Which one do you think comes first? A sleep disorder or an anxiety disorder? Well, it turns out both. An anxiety disorder can lead to sleep deprivation, and sleep deprivation can lead to an anxiety disorder. So if you have either, you need to address them, as they could lead to other problems. I'm going to give you a few quick things of what you can do to improve your sleep quality. And, surprise, it is not, let's take some medication for sleep. That's not your first option. Now, none of these helps. Talk to your physician and tell them everything you've tried. If nothing is still working and you still cannot get any sleep, talk to them and they will prescribe the right thing for you at the lowest dosage. But number one, you want to get some exercise, or we can call it movement, early in the day. And this could be 15 or 20 minutes of consecutive moving. If you don't want to call it exercise, it could be a walk, a ride on a bike, anything where you're moving around. Get that done earlier in the day, not the last few hours before you go to sleep. And that in itself can help your sleep quality. Another thing is limit your caffeine and alcohol. And if you must have those, this sounds horrible, but you shouldn't have them at night. I'm not telling you to drink alcohol in the morning, but like I love coffee, but I cannot have it after noon because then I would not have good sleep quality. If people drink alcohol in the evenings, they think it helps them to relax and to sleep, and it may help you to go to sleep, but then you wake up and you have very broken sleep and you're not having quality sleep. So either of those in the last few hours of the evening before sleep is going to disrupt your sleep patterns. It's really critical that you have those REMs of sleep. It's important that you hit the deep sleep, and it'll only be for a few minutes at a time, and then you come back up in the cycle back to your your light sleeping, and then you go back down, get some more deep sleep minutes, and then you come back up. But you can easily come back up and stay on that high point where it means you're awake, and you've got to get back into it. So we want quality sleep. Is going to prepare your body and your mind physically, mentally, emotionally to be your best the next day. If you're not getting that, that's a problem. So focus on these things for quality sleep. So we've got get the exercise, don't drink the coffee or alcohol, and then manage the environment of where you're sleeping. The temperature, make sure it's right for your body. Some people need it a little bit cooler than they would want it during the day, and that's different for everybody. The light, you want it as dark as possible so your body can release that melatonin. And the sound. You want to make sure there's no disruptive sounds. You might like a steady sound, like a fan or a sound machine with white noise or certain things, but you don't want any abrupt sound stopping and starting. That can affect your sleep as well. And then use relaxation techniques that we're talking about and that we're about to talk about, and then limit screen time. Oh, this could be the hardest one for us all. So try not to look at your phone or your iPad or your computer or the TV within 1 hour of when you go to sleep. Turns out the best thing you can do is the last hour before you're asleep, either read a book, the one with paper, the book, not the one on your phone that you're reading or on your iPad or whatever. So you can read, you can listen to music, or you can do some of these relaxation techniques that we'll be talking about. And if all of this fails, talk to your physician about other options because sleep is really important. Okay, so relaxation techniques. Let's run through these fairly quickly because I really could spend a long time on these. And let me know if you have other questions when we get to our panel later. So some options are visualization, and that is very effective. This could be where you picture in your mind when you close your eyes, picture where you love to be. Where is your happy place? Mine is the beach. I just love watching the ocean, those waves come in, hearing those sounds reminds me of just, the miracle that we are and that earth is and how big God is and all these great things. Some people, they love the mountains. They love that crisp, fresh air. There's nothing that great. They love doing something like being on a boat or on a bicycle or being around their grandchildren, hearing those precious little laughs. Or they love just sitting around the table with their family. That's their favorite place. So picture that wherever it is, and then close your eyes, think about that, and then think about why does this bring me joy? And just live in that moment for a few minutes, just remembering those best times, thinking about the next times you get to be there, or just kind of go in there in your mind for a couple of minutes. So that's visualization. Another one is meditation, and I'll go ahead and talk about this one and prayer together. Meditation, which really just, if you've never tried it, there's apps for it. There's ways you can learn to do it. A lot of it's not, some kind of voodoo or rocket science. It's just thinking about how you're breathing and thinking about nothing else but your breathing. So you're just so focused on breath, your breath coming in and going out. You could listen to music in the process, music that is comforting and relaxing. And then prayer is a little bit stronger than meditation. It has some of the same effects from the research and then some others. So let me just tell you a little bit about those. So meditation stimulates the prefrontal cortex. So this is the frontal lobe. Well, the prefrontal cortex. We can stimulate that with meditation and with prayer. But this particular is a study about meditation, and that can help you to have more positive emotions. And then similarly, it can bring in and put it back in its little box, the amygdala. That is the little thing in the brain that is the center or the hub of fear and emotions that come from fear. And if the amygdala gets out of control, you can just plummet into all these negative thoughts. So you want to tame that, put it back in its box, and say no. And meditation can do that as well as prayer does also. And then it slows the shrinking of your gray matter, of your brain, of the cortex. So as we age, it shrinks a little bit. Or if you just don't use your brain, you just kind of stay on sleep mode all the time, like your computer, and you don't use it, it's not active, it can start to shrink. And so meditation, these studies on meditation said it slows that. And then prayer, Dr. Newberg did quite a bit of studies on prayer. He's out of University of Pennsylvania. And he said that just 12 minutes of prayer a day for 8 weeks literally changed the structure of the brain in a very positive way. He calls it a workout for the brain to keep it healthy and even to reduce aging and reduce depression. And he said it helped to increase the frontal lobe activity. So lots of good things comes out of prayer. Okay, so that's visualization, meditation, prayer, and then breathing exercises, progressive relaxation, yoga, tai chi, any of these exercises that helps you to focus on your breathing while you're moving. Real quick, I want to tell you about how to do a breathing exercise. We're going to do this together. So if you are like a scuba diver or someone with this incredible lung capacity because you use it all the time and you can hold your breath for 3 minutes, then you could do this longer. If you have respiratory problems like asthma or bronchitis or COPD, you want to do it for a shorter period of time. But normally we want to focus on breathing in for the count of maybe 5, holding it for 3, and then breathing out as long as you can until you're out of breath, and then you take that nice deep breath again. If you have those respiratory difficulties, just breathe in for 2, hold for 1, and breathe out. And when you breathe out, press against your abdomen and push out that carbon dioxide. Okay, let's do this together. We're going to breathe in for a count of, we're going to try to do 5, and then hold it for 3 if you can, and then we're going to breathe out as long as we can. Ready? Okay, here we go. Great. And then take that deep breath and do it again. If you can do that for 5 consecutive minutes, you can do a lot of these deep breathing. Hold it and then release it as long as you can. Press out as you breathe out and let all of those negative thoughts and fears and worries go out with the breath. If you can do that for at least 5 minutes consecutively, it can considerably or significantly bring your heartbeat back to where it needs to be, can bring your blood pressure back to where it needs to be. And it also helps to decrease the stress, decreases the anxiety, pulls you back into your normal mode without medication. It's just sort of retraining your brain and your heart and your lungs to work effectively. And then progressive relaxation, I don't have a lot of time to go through this, but just where you tighten up a muscle and then release it. You start with the top of your head, your neck, all the way down to your toes. You tighten and you release. After you tighten and release, you've relaxed those muscles more than if you had not tightened and you just tried to relax by itself. So those are all some of the things that you can do for relaxation techniques. You want to incorporate these at least a few minutes every day, especially before you try to go to sleep at night. Do some of these relaxation techniques, or anytime you feel yourself plummeting into an anxiety mode. Now, if you, related to anxiety, if you're in a full panic attack, that's where you may need a medication that a physician prescribes to you. But if you're just feeling a little anxious, try one of these instead, so that you can save those medications to We call it when you're like in an emergency break glass for this. That's what those are for. So these can help you. Okay, so now journaling strategies. There's 3 types of journaling that you can do. I just recently read a study where they had multiple subjects, like hundreds of subjects who were depressed or not depressed, and they gave them all they gave them these tests and analyzed them, asked lots of questions. It's this long study, and some of them got a placebo pill, just a sugar pill, and some of them got a regular pill. Some of them were told to write 3 things down that they were thankful for, that they were grateful for every day, to write it down and or to speak it out loud, to acknowledge by writing or speaking what they were grateful for, 3 things a day. At the end, they found that those who had depression and had been writing down 3 things and or speaking them out loud had significantly decreased depression. And this makes so much sense because we train our brain to focus on what is good and what we're grateful for, and not focusing on everything we've got to do that seems so impossible. So one type of journaling is called the gratitude journaling. Another type is called emotional release. And this is where you have a private place to write that nobody's going to see, but you've got to get those thoughts out of what is really upsetting you, what's frustrating you. It's so important that we don't repress those horrible negative things that we're dealing with and we don't have any help. We repress those down. One day, it's going to all surface as a disease, a disorder. I see gastrointestinal disorders, vocal disorders. I treat those. All the cardiac problems that you can have, muscle aches and pains, decreased immunity, anxiety, depression, the list goes on and on. It just basically, it can also result in increased inflammation that leads to all sorts of disease process. So emotional releasing by writing it all down. And sometimes you'll think, this is pretty bad. I need to get some help with this. And other times you'll think, you know what, now that I've gotten it out, I'm feeling much better. I just needed a vent. But that is a very healthy type of journaling if that's what you need. The 3rd type of journaling is just bullet points or personal planning journals. And this is where you just write down all the things you need to do that day and check them off as they're done. And that is a type of journaling. And it turns out that when we check something off that we've done, it releases just a little bit of like happy chemicals, a little bit of good adrenaline, a little bit of I feel really good about that. I checked something off my list. But it also helps us to realize when we write them all down, I just wrote down 20 things that I think I need to do today. And some of them are very time intensive. And some of them could literally take several days to do. Being a little hard on myself. Let me focus on the 5 things I can get done today and feel pretty good about that. And these other things could wait until tomorrow, and it's okay. So those are 3 types of journaling. If you can just take 5 minutes to journal every day, whichever one is most helpful to you, or maybe a little bit of all of them, that in itself is going to help you. That's a great type of self-care for you. And then nutrition. So quickly, I want to tell you, nutrition, a healthy diet, can help you better than medication in many ways. So a healthy diet reduces your stress, increases your immunity. Some foods can actually release serotonin into your brain, which is what a lot of antidepressants do. And they can also stop or cut or decrease the amount of cortisol and adrenaline that's being released when you're in a stressful situation. I'll give you a few stress busting examples of food. I call these the stress busters. Based on a lot of studies that I've done, I'll give you a quick list. Complex carbs, not the sugary kind, things like the brown rice, the potato, the oatmeal, those things. Oranges, spinach, very healthy. Fatty fish, got those omega-3s in them. Black tea, and then pistachios, almonds, and avocados. They have healthy fat. Healthy fat can help to regulate your blood sugar. It helps your brain to function. it took me a long time to eat an avocado or even half of one. I just couldn't get over how much fat was in it, but it turns out it was good fat. I needed it all that time. I needed to get rid of the bad fats that can clog up my arteries. These are good fats, and they can reduce your stress. And then raw vegetables and milk. So I can spend longer on that. And there's actually a whole video on the Care Partners site about healthy food. So I'll continue. And then hydration, even a little bit of dehydration a day can increase your moodiness. And that can be your ability to get more frustrated, or your anxiety, your irritability. I mean, that's something that we almost can't afford to have some days, to be irritable to every little thing if we're taking care of someone, right? So a little bit of dehydration can change the way you respond to things and the way you're thinking, and it's not good. And remember, by the time you're thirsty, you're already fully dehydrated. So keep those liquids coming. And it doesn't have to be just straight water. That's one of my favorites. I love water, and I drink a lot of it. But even like watermelon fruits have a lot of water content. Soups, a lot of things have water in them. So incorporate as much of that into your diet as possible. Don't be afraid of the caffeinated drinks, but if for every cup of coffee you have, go ahead and have one extra glass of water than what you would have had otherwise, to keep from being dehydrated. And then 3 other things, and then we're done. Movement. You know, I have to go here. Exercise. Whatever is okay with your ability. So that could be walking, it could be riding a bike, it could be walking with a friend. That's the best kind of movement, I think, because you get the social time as well. We don't have time to go into all the benefits of social interactions, but there's a long list. But getting some exercise does so much to your brain as well as to your body. It decreases stress, anxiety, tension, anger, and depression. There's another study similar to the one with journaling, where a group of people who were depressed were given different things to do. Some were given Zoloft, which is a type of, it's an example of a antidepressant. And then one group exercised 5 times a day at a level they could do. They weren't sprinting or doing Zumba every day, something they could do, they were comfortable with, 5 times a day for 6 months. And the people who had been exercising had a very similar result to those who were taking one Zoloft a day, 7 days a week. That was a very powerful study. So know that it can literally change the way your brain is functioning. It increases your quality of sleep, and that's one of the ultimate goals. If we do all these other things, we're increasing our quality of sleep, not just the number of hours. It enhances the hippocampus. That's the thing in the brain where our memory comes from. Triggers neurogenesis. That means new cells being born. We all have new cells being born, by the way, in our brain every day. But the problem is a lot of them die before they just barely get up and going. The 2 things that can kill new cells being born in our brain every day is depression and stress. Depression and stress. A lot of times we have both of those as a caregiver, right? The other things that could kill them or contribute to those new cells dying is lack of sleep, which you will have lack of sleep if you have depression or stress, especially stress, as well as poor nutrition. So it helps, exercise helps them to stay alive, kind of prevents the things that kills them and increases the things that keeps them alive. And it also increases our long-term memory. People did well on long-term memory performance tasks when they were exercising, and increases frontal lobe attention, our attention to task or to what we hear, what we learn, how we process information. It increases all of that. So quickly, in my last couple of minutes, music activates widespread bilateral network of brain tumors, brain regions, so I'll get to the tumors in a minute, such as attention, memory, information processing, and emotional processing. I have a whole 3-hour class on what music does to your brain and your body. It's a long, long, long thing, but if you can walk with a friend socializing or walk in nature while you're listening to music, you are doing a ton of great things to your body. And the last one is laughter. Laughter decreases stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. You cannot be producing or maintaining a high level of those stress hormones while you're laughing. Laughing negates the other. So laughing sort of takes over and relaxes your body. It also activates these T cells, immunoglobulins, and these killer cells. There's these killer cells, won't go into all that, we're almost out of time. These killer cells that reject tumors and viruses and negative things. And also, there's this great study out of Oxford that said this laughter, they proved that it releases this hormone, or not a hormone, but a substance, a chemical in your body that's very similar to morphine. You naturally produce this pain relieving substance with extreme, like belly laughter or continuous laughter. And then it's also a great workout. And as a result, you just work out, you're just laughing so hard your stomach hurts. And then as a result, your whole body relaxes and it decreases the stress and relieves the tension. And it can, reduce the pain and all of that. Okay, so now we're done. Thank you so much for being a part of this. We'll be on the panel later, and you can ask any questions that you have. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you in a bit.